Thank you very much for being here. There are a couple things that we wanted you to connect to, us to connect to. One is, as Dr. King said, the fierce urgency of now. The other is each other and how beyond president, beyond party, beyond policy, we can work together to help our neighbors in need. With that said, I want to just fast forward through time, introduce our dear friend Larry Tobin, who's here. I'm going to tell you that Larry works for the Shapiro Foundation, does a ton of things, and has personally welcomed, hosted 7 different families since 2021. And we're going to have a conversation up here with Dr. Gabo from IFC, with Lino Covarrubias from Jewish Family Services MetroWest. Our evening is going to have a short conversation here. We are going to hear a few stories from Reverend Katie Cole and Rabbi Eliza Berger of how congregations themselves got to a place of yes. We're going to break out into small groups and have some connecting time for some short conversations, come back and question and answer, and leave feeling more connected and energized as we go out in prayer. Sound good? Does that sound good? I am going to do 2 things. The first I'll do is try to share in really specific terms what I know and what I don't know. I think every single one of us is coming in with a very different set of just knowledge about terms, about legal pathways, about what we do know until noontime, Eastern time on January 20th, and what we may or may not know starting thereafter. And then I am going to introduce 2 truly dear friends, and I only, I guess, speak on panels with friends, which is nice. So let me start kind of with the first piece. So last week, I had the privilege of going to DC not once, but twice. On Monday and Tuesday, I was there celebrating what we can still do over the next month. We have 1 month left, and there is a lot. And then starting on Thursday when I was there, I had the privilege of attending a breakfast with the National Association of Evangelicals and engaging and embracing folks that I don't typically have the privilege of engaging with. And seeing where we have commonalities, and then in separate conversations, understanding what we might start to experience, what our friends and neighbors might start to experience. But again, I don't want to fearmonger because we don't know. So the one thing that we do know is that under this the Biden administration, we have had the privilege of welcoming in 100,000 refugees through the U.S. resettlement system this past year, and which is unprecedented because in the final year under Trump, it was 12,000, right? That's sevenfold. And we are only about a quarter or a third into the fiscal year. And so the one lever we have, the one thing that we can do is through resettlement agencies locally, they still have about, let's call it a week, to be able to push on the State Department. It's called the PRM department within the State Department to say, hey, we have capacity to take one more family. We've been having these conversations day in and day out. And there remains, I would say, for any incremental family that folks can step up for, I'll say a word, and then Lino, when he's up, will share in greater detail. We have literally, I'd say, a week, right, until kind of we all pack up for the holidays. And Lino will share the specific economics of it and specific incredible opportunity. But as Sasha said, my family has had the privilege of welcoming in 7 different families, about half of them through JFS MetroWest directly. And in general, this is a really expensive place, as we know. And in general, co-sponsoring, as we would call it, a refugee family, let's say, costs $20,000 to subsidize rent, to get them situated and what have you. And Lino, through generous donors, which for the first time ever is not us, which is really nice. Thank you. Congratulations. Has a 1-to-1 match. So any congregation, any group of neighbors, book club, anybody who can commit to raising $10,000, and not up front, but over the course of 6 months or so. And I commit to helping you find housing if you're willing to send the families to the Chestnut Hill area or West Roxbury area, can bring in one incremental family to safety. Okay? So that is the one thing we do know. And there are over 100,000 families that have been fully vetted and approved by Homeland Security, by the UNHCR and by IOM. Over 100,000 individuals are waiting in the wings. And in a best case scenario, we're about to welcome in another 15,000 of them. Right? That's 85,000 people who not only have been vetted and approved, but are, even though they're trying to keep their expectations at bay, are expecting to come to this country, and the vast, vast, vast majority of them are not going to have that privilege soon. One family, to save a life is to save the world, right? Like one family. And so I would encourage each of you, I'm looking at folks from Temple Beth Elohim that I think has probably sponsored more refugee families than any other congregation, certainly in the Jewish community. And for each of us who's done that, like, dig deeper when we think we can't, because if we don't do it in the next week, I don't know when the next time we're going to be able to do that work. That's a very different context. And those are individuals who come here fully lawfully. Those are individuals who after 365 days apply for a green card, who after 5 years apply for citizenship. They come with a full gamut of benefits. The piece that's really unique and different for this time versus 8 years ago is that the world likes to live in binaries, and we don't live in a binary anymore.
That's it.
It's really easy to read any publication and think of illegals or folks that are here in an undocumented or in an irregular manner, and folks that are here fully lawfully or legally. But the truth is, and this is where Dr. Gabot is the literal expert in Massachusetts, is the vast majority of refugees that have entered America over the past 4 years, well over 1 million people, first from Afghanistan, and then from Ukraine, and then from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, and from dozens of other countries, from folks who lawfully presented themselves to Border Patrol through a particular app called CBP-1. Well over 1 million people that have entered over the past 3.5 years have entered with the legal status that is called humanitarian paroles. It's a terrible name. Has nothing to do with the criminal system. It's a 2 or a 3-year program. It is definitionally temporary. And from there, you have to do one of 3 things. Figure out how to get long-term durable status for yourself. You have entered lawfully. You've entered 100% lawfully. You are documented. But it expires. And so the first option, the option I hope that we can engage with together is helping as many of those individuals as possible who want to remain here lawfully and who have a path to do so, ensure that they can do so. And I'll turn to my colleagues in just a few minutes to go into details on how we can do that as a huge, broader community that's come together. And of course, the other 2 options are they either go home willingly or on, or they go under and they go dark and they go in hiding. And so every human will choose within their own agency what they should do. But I'm yet to meet a human who's in Massachusetts who doesn't want option 1. Is that fair? And so there are so many of us sitting in this room that work for different incredible organizations up there and beyond. And there are so many, it's like the old Reese's commercials, right? Like there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, right? Like there is no wrong way for us to accept the calling and say yes. What I hope to do with, I would argue, my 2 most trusted friends and colleagues in this space in Massachusetts, personally, is share just a couple ways that our congregations, that us and our friends can do so. And what I'm hoping, what I know from Reverend Laura and from Sasha, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to harness all of the good that we want to do and understand how we can bring our strengths to the table there. I'm thinking about that in a few different ways. One way, let's just be real about this. We live in a really complex and diverse and beautiful greater Boston city of over 6 million people. And some of us have access to financial means in our congregations, and some of us don't. Some of us have physical space in our physical congregations, and some don't, right? I think of my own congregation as we unequivocally, whether we like to believe it or not, have an ability to go raise a meaningful sum of philanthropy for people in need overnight if we have to. And as my wife runs the preschool at her school, there's no space in the synagogue. And we also have a huge range of congregants and members of our communities. One of the things that I'll ask Dr. Gobo to share a little bit about is this concept of home hosting and literally welcoming folks in a safe and a really protected and a loving way into one's actual home. I live in Needham and my parents live in Needham. I have 2 young kids and a third on the way. There is no way that I can remain married and have a refugee family living under our roof. But you can be sure that I've started planting the seeds for my empty nester parents who have 3 open bedrooms 2.5 miles away from me, right? So even in a nuclear family, in essence, 2.5 miles, we each have our own real unique skills and love to bear. And the final thing I want to just kind of get us thinking about here is the range and the complexity of how we're going to embrace these humans with so much love. What Lino and Dr. Gobo represent is both the ability to go mobilize a lot of love, the incredible cultural competence, and some of the hard skills. Neither of them are lawyers, and neither of them have full-blown legal teams on their team. I see some of our colleagues out there represented, right? We're not going to get actively engaged with the advocacy on either a state level and certainly not on a federal level. And I'm not even going to comment on that particularly, but many of us in this room feel that some of the laws don't make a ton of sense yet and maybe should move, right? There's so many different pieces that need to come into play to fix this for our neighbors. And so where I'm going to excitedly lean on Reverend Laura and on Sasha and on their 2 organizations in particular is bring all of the assets, all of that love to bear, put it quite literally in a spreadsheet, but in a loving spreadsheet, and understand how we can bring our own strengths to one another, right? So how can we match a synagogue like mine that might have some means with a church in East Boston that might have some space, but can't heat that space because they have 60 families and none of them are and without tremendous means. Boom. All of a sudden, you can be housing dozens and dozens of families that would otherwise be homeless. How can we partner a mainline white church in the western suburbs with incredible Haitian churches down on the South Shore, down in the Brockton area, right? Like these things, these types of human-to-human relationships only make us stronger and better. So with that, let me just pause. Is there anything I said, any of the technical pieces that anybody has a clarifying question on that I should hop on now? Or can I introduce my dear friends? Rabbi.
Give specific steps and how do you get in touch with you?
Yeah, 100%. So thank you for the question. So with that, thank you. I'm going to introduce, of course, the question is the most important question of the night, which is how do we actually do something tachlis? How do we actually do something really specific and meaningful? And what are we going to do? So Lino is the CEO of JFS of MetroWest, which is the refugee resettlement agency in Boston that has been around for over 40 years now. 45 years. JFS and MetroWest is one of the first 5 refugee resettlement agencies across all the US that said, we are going to go out of our way to make sure that 100% of the refugee families we're welcoming in are welcomed in through something that's called co-sponsorship, right? Where there is a group of volunteers coming up completely alongside his unbelievably spectacular professional staff of caseworkers and social workers, and doing that in true and meaningful partnership, and all the messiness and ugliness that comes with a bunch of folks like me or a bunch of folks like my mom trying to, welcome in somebody else. Lino also represents, on a personal level, I'll just say, all the absolute best of why this country welcomes in immigrants, because as a first generation, he's a 24-year naval veteran and a graduate of the Naval Academy. And go Navy. And right to his left is one of my dear teachers, Dr. Gobo. And this is how you know this woman is off the charts brilliant. This woman has a PhD in management and organizational management and behavior. And this is a woman who understands that the needs are so freaking great right now. Sorry, that's an okay word? Freaking's okay? Okay. Yeah. That she doesn't have time to focus on the governance and on this and on that, because this woman, 24 hours a day, is serving This woman has taught me so much through your leadership every single day. And I will also say, in a moment of tremendous humility, something I've never said publicly before, I had a meeting with Dr. Gabo and her number 2 recently, and an incredible volunteer. And where I was called out on being part of institutional racism. Truly. And where we had a second conversation unpacking that, and where we, as loving, non-traditional partners, got somewhere even deeper and stronger. And so with that, I want to just tell you that I am sitting next to 2 giants. And what I want to do is, first and foremost, ask the 2 of you kind of one simple question and then kind of build up to the broader question. So the specific question I want to ask is, hey, if I as an individual had 10 hours a month to give over the next 6 months, or as we approach Christmas and Hanukkah and we're in the season of giving, and I could go and come up with $1,000 by going to my friends and neighbors and really stretching, what's the highest, best use of either of those things or those together? And then after that kind of more general question, that maybe what we can do is then kind of go into some of the more specifics of the concepts of home hosting, the concepts of co-sponsorship, and more holistically, perhaps especially with you, Dr. Gabo, about how we can really wrap ourselves around some of those individuals who are here in Massachusetts on a humanitarian parole status that is likely to expire, and what we need to do to help as many families as possible. Dr. Gabo, do you want to go first?
And I thank you, Larry. Always a pleasure to be with you, Larry, and with all of you. And one thing that I was sharing this morning at one of the meetings is that the good thing about this time and the good thing about the work that we do is the fact that we are never alone. We are never left alone. So there is always someone who is making a phone call or stopping by to say, what can I do? Is there something that I can help with? And that's one of the reasons why, although so many people are saying, oh, your job is so stressful. And I'm like, I'm not doing a job. This is a ministry. And to me, every single time that we find a way to help someone, that brings so much joy to you that you don't feel the burden. And the other thing that I said, I was talking to a number of people from Partners in Health. So Partners in Health used to, as you know, work in Haiti a lot, going back and forth, traveling, doing a lot of work. And then for the past, almost 3 years, they have not been able to go because of all of the challenges that, we have in Haiti. And some of them came to us and said, you know what? We cannot go to Haiti, but guess what? Haiti is right here with us. When we are looking at all of the families coming here, as Larry said, if you're walking down Mattapan Square, it's almost like you are in Haiti because you meet all of the people, you hear the language, you see them acting as though they were in Haiti. So for a lot of people who love to travel, to go do ministry all across the world, I'm telling you, there is an opportunity right here because we have so many families who are here in need. And right now, Larry, if I had, a friend with $10,000, I will tell you, the biggest thing that we are facing right now is fear. Fear. People are worried to death. My program coordinator for our English classes, sent us an email. He said, Dr. Gabo, we need to do something. And I'm like, what's going on? He said, we started to see attendance at our English classes decrease so rapidly. It's not funny anymore. And I'm like, really, what's going on? And he said, yeah, people started to feel, that they are at risk of coming to places where people know them, and then they stop showing up. And I'm like, really? So just to give you a sense of what's going on. So being there with families to remind them that we are not going to leave them alone, that we are going to fight together. And I'm glad that I see Liz, a number of other, advocates. Advocacy is going to be key over the next few weeks. And bringing families together for them to feel safe and helping them with their legal. As Larry said, we had over 50,000 people coming to what we call the CHNV parole program. And then now, the first program that the new administration said that they're going to attack is this program. So currently, we are in a race helping people to apply for other legal status. So legal work is going to be critical it is now very critical, because if you come to my office, you will see so many families coming asking, what do I do? Where do I go? What type of, provision that is out there. So, reassuring people, offering or opening the doors for them, finding other pathways for them to remain in this country is going to be critical. So we will be talking about housing later, but right now I think, the biggest need is to support families in terms of finding other legal pathways to remain in this country and to work with our partners to start our advocacy campaign. So a number of my other colleagues, they've said, we need stories. We need families to start putting the stories together, because that's what we're going to be using so that we can challenge the administration, in the next few months. So the sky is the limit in terms of, what people can do. And let me stop here so that I can come back after with more information.
Before Lino jumps in, I just want to lift up two different themes that I heard you say, Dr. Gabo. So the first is fear, and fear is going to translate to loneliness. And Reverend Laura, what you said is right. The only enemy is cold and despair, right? Yes. Fear is eerily similar to what you're saying our neighbors are already experiencing. Yes. And so I want to lift up a couple different ways that Reverend Laura and Sasha will put their heads together, come back to us about what we can do, right? One is just a concept of accompaniment, right? Some of us that have privilege of having lighter skin, that have the privilege of having citizenship or green card, have the ability to walk into places arm in arm with folks. And that I can think of an experience recently where I had to go to the ICE field office in Burlington with a dear friend of mine who had previously entered America irregularly. And the only way he could walk through those doors was with me at least waiting at the doors. They wouldn't even allow me in, right? So there's a power there. There's another power where something right before the program Dr. Gabo and I were discussing, there is reason to believe that ICE will be looking around America to round up folks that are here irregularly, which first and foremost, I will reiterate, comes to the primary point you kept reiterating, Dr. Cabot, which is if we help as many folks access some kind of continuation of lawful status, ICE has no business in getting to them. And so that is the proactive. But the reactive is there's going to be some day when they go to Mattapan Square. But you know what? They're not going to Needham or to Newton or to Sherburne. And so thinking about that power of place that many of us hold is a secondary piece here.
That's even
Lino, I would love for you to kind of do two things. One is you can answer that initial question, pick up on the theme of the need for the legal pieces, because I know that you're not only focused on those who've entered here on humanitarian parole. You, based in Framingham, have a really fascinating range of neighbors that are there, many of which have mixed status. And then while you kind of have that floor, maybe you could pivot and talk a little bit about that opportunity of co-sponsorship before January 20th as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. I'm going to definitely underscore something that Dr. Gabu said about fear and anxiety. That is the common thing we're seeing across the immigrant community, whether they're here with proper documentation or not. And what the fear creates, it creates safety issues for families where they don't call the police when there's situations where the police can offer safety. There are situations where they don't know whether to open the door or not for somebody. So one of the things that we are, right, as we think about our operational plan with the new administration coming, is to make sure with our partners, and a shout out to MIRA, making sure the community knows their rights, right? You have rights here in America, whether you have documentation or not. And what's interesting, if you've been here in the U.S. without documentation for more than 2 years, you cannot be forcibly deported without due process. That's very important. And that's where we're going to need attorneys and so forth. When somebody's in detention, the government can grab you, throw you in jail, and do nothing for 48 to 72 hours. But to answer the question, Rabbi, of what we do, there's a lot of information on this table from all the organizations. Make sure you take that. I know that on Zoom, we're going to have those links. It has the menu of the different areas where we need help. It's going to be know your rights. If you speak Spanish, Portuguese, or other languages, making sure that we're hustling, trying to get the community in all of Greater Boston, really, so they know their rights. And also this whole concept of what we're really, really worried about are children who are U.S. citizens and their parents are not, and to make sure that they have what's called a family plan in place, so the parents can decide if they're going to be deported, what to do with their children. Last time, the 2016, 2017, we were behind. There was a lot of these families that these children went into the system because we didn't have that in place, and we do not want that to happen. And also making sure we're advocating with our municipal police that they're going to be there to, again, offer safety to the immigrant community and not be part of the roundups with the federal authorities. If there's a warrant, of course, that they'll have to serve a warrant. To the question of what you can do with your volunteerism, it all depends on your time. It depends when you're available. Again, what the best way to do is to reach out to our organizations, because our volunteer coordinators will absolutely, we know where the gaps are and where we can use you rapidly. And I will underscore the word rapidly. We are moving very quick on all these different stages. Like we have an operations plan where we think of we call the emergent move. And for that, of course, it costs money, because what the State Department pays is only 3 months of expenses. So imagine I sent you to China and told you you have to be self-sufficient in the 4th month. You say that's crazy. That's a different discussion about our immigration program in America. But that's why we have the emergent needs. And then we go into the second area that we're really thinking about tactical. All the different things are going to happen after January 20th, the different executive orders, and having volunteer teams surrounded around families is a success model. Having faith organizations, for us at JFS, our best success model has been engaging faith organizations in this sacred work. And I'm so glad to see there's so many faith organizations here tonight. I'll keep my comments short, because I think it's really, really important for the different groups to get together and figure out, hey, what can we do as a community?
So grateful to both of you. So option one on something super specific and time-bound is if your community, your organization, your congregation could commit to co-sponsoring, to coming up alongside JFS and raising over the course of time up to $10,000, we will ensure that you have my contact or Lino's contact or Sasha's contact or somebody, and that is time-bound by Christmas, right? That's super. And that family will arrive by January 20th, and you will be with them and have a transformative experience, and their lives will be saved for it. Option two is we will commingle. We will make sure that there's a clear understanding of what IFC's specific needs are, what JFS's specific needs are, what some of our other partners are. But what I keep hearing is kind of legal, but it's really legal baked into kind of, let's say, a comprehensive case management, right? We can and we should go fund incredible legal aid organizations that are in this community. What's incredibly unique about these two organizations is you fully know the families and they fully trust you. And legal is only a piece of it, which gets to the second action thing that each of our individual communities can do, which is we can come up as a full volunteer team and wrap around families that are here in a semi or temporarily or even undocumented manner, and make sure that we are providing them with a home, with the resources they need, with the legal services they need, and with the love and the accompaniment that they need as well. The final piece of that, kind of 3B, is that there will be this unique opportunity that we expect to be announced any day or any week now by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on this home hosting scheme in particular, for which IFC will be one of the co-leads on this project. And it will be the only program I'm aware of anywhere in the globe in which it will be equal parts the diasporic community, Haitian churches and the Haitian community of Greater Boston that has been here for generations, welcoming in the new arrivals from Haiti, and the general neighbors like most of us in this room, and doing that as partners, right? And so there will be a modest financial commitment from the Commonwealth to even pay for some folks who could be potential hosts that for whom they would actually need money for the heating bill or what have you. And part of, not the explicit piece of, but part of the learning of, a part of the goal of that, which is something that Lino and JFS have specifically piloted in the MetroWest area, is that we're one of the groups we're specifically targeting are incredible neighbors who are aging in place. I want to be very careful. My parents are in their 70s, but who might also benefit from a little bit of extra company from somebody who's keeping an eye on them, making sure the heat's on, making sure the driveway's shoveled. And it's this like incredibly beautiful win-win piece that also theoretically could present a little bit of stable passive income for some families that would need that. So with that, I hope we kind of gave you a few different specifics. I think the core is that JCRC and the Mass Council will come back together with kind of what those menu options look like. And I think there's a lot, you can slice it as a congregation. You can pinpoint it as an individual. You can think about it as a family group. Some things need money and some things need time and some things need all the above.
So the cost to have a family, the cost of reselling a family, the gap is about $20,000 to $25,000 a year here in Massachusetts. So it could be that two organizations get together and can raise at 20, or let's say two organizations say we can raise 10, and I've raised some matching funds, so I may be able to find the 10 to 15 from a matching donor, so that your congregation can a full complement co-sponsorship would be able to have funding for the families and also the volunteer groups that we would help train to make sure that you're able to do the resettlement work with our case managers.
If you are a congregation that has never done this before and thinks for whatever reason you could raise, for real reasons, thinks you could raise a few $1,000s but not yet 10, talk to Reverend Laura and bring me into the conference. Like, let's figure out how to make sure that's not where you get to know. Please.
Yeah.
That's actually a perfect segue. In a moment here, we're going to shift and actually hear from two congregational leaders who have stepped into this work. So I want to highlight here real quick that out of the 200 people that registered here, there are some general categories of questions that have been asked, okay? And I'm going to name those because it's going to give us a little bit of shape after we go into small group conversation. But, really, people want to know what are the volunteer opportunities and specific ways people can help. You talked some about that. They want to know about TPS. They want to know about language, right? And I really want to shout out Liz and MIRA, especially tonight in this room. We're going to put a QR code up there. There's document in the back. I want to just say a great big thanks to our friends Ruth and Liz from MIRA Coalition, who have put together a glossary of terms to really help folks understand what do we mean when we're talking about, migrants. What is TPS? What is documented? What are we actually saying here, right? There are people who are asking questions about sanctuary, shelter, and ICE. And what do you do if they come to your congregation? What are your responsibilities? They want to know about safety and security. And they want to know, folks here want to know about planning and how we're planning both right here, right now, and for tomorrow. So with that, what we're going to do is pivot for a few moments. I'm going to call on Rabbi Elisa Berger once again to come and share. And then Reverend Katie Cole is going to share as well stories of how their congregations got to a place of yes. So please, Rabbi Elisa Berger.
So I'm here. I'm one of the rabbis here at Temple Emmanuel, and we have hosted a number of families. The first time we got to yes, it was about a crisis unfolding in the world in Syria, and our community mobilized around the need and necessity that existed. The next time that we got to yes, Wes, the senior rabbi here, and I had been visiting the jails where immigrants were being kept under the Trump policy that detained immigrants as they came into this country seeking asylum. We met the most incredible woman, and she shared her story with us. She is a LGBTQ survivor from Uganda and had been doing all sorts of powerful activism work there and was dedicating her life to a life of service. And we were just so moved by our 1 hour that we had with her that we came back and wrote a letter to the congregation, and instantly there were 7 families that asked if they could host her indefinitely in their homes, and another 200 volunteers that signed up to support her. And that led to support for a Rwandan family, for families from Central America, 2 families from Ukraine, now 3 families from Afghanistan. And what I want to say to you is that however you get to yes, what feels deeply important is that this work gives more than it takes. in a very serious way. We have members who have joined this project who feel more connected to community, who feel more connected to spirituality, who feel more connected to each other. And it's fascinating to me because we had, right, when we supported this woman from Uganda, we got involved because she was so compelling and we knew her story and we wanted to know her and we wanted to support her and we wanted to see her succeed. But since then, we've supported a number of families that we did not know their story. And what I can tell you is that the stories that they have to tell, the courage that they have demonstrated just to survive to this moment, the gifts that they have to offer, it is the most incredible privilege and blessing to be able to use our privilege, to be able to use our resources, to be able to use our energy to lift up those stories, to lift up those blessings. And I think it will power a brighter future.
Hi, my name is Katie Cole. I am a pastor at a church in a place at Hartford Street Presbyterian Church in Natick. Our congregation has hosted, for the last 18 months, we've hosted, I think, 26 families in our building. And here's how we got, not all at the same time, this is over the 18 months. And here's how we got to yes. So first, I'm an interim pastor, and our congregation had gone through the interim process. And so we had done a mission study and we were asking questions like, what is our congregational story? What are our values? Who have we been? Who are we being called to be? And out of that process, had really kind of reconnected with the story of this congregation and had created for ourselves a new mission statement that we at Hartford Street Presbyterian Church have experienced the welcoming, transformational, and extravagant love of God and seek to share that with others. It's a nice sentence that has 3 points. It was going to make a great 3-week sermon series. It was summer. I needed something to preach on. This is perfect. So the first week I preached on being welcoming, and I served both my congregation Sunday morning and also a Brazilian congregation that worships in the evening. And so at both congregations preached about, yes, our congregations have been welcoming, but as we conclude worship, let's all pray about how we can be more welcoming. 24 hours later, a friend who works for the state called to say, hey, this is a crisis. We need to think boldly and creatively. Who do you know that you think could host families in the building? And what she outlined was a very small and very specific request. So how we got to yes, 1, we were grounded in our values and we had already done that work. 2, when the call came, it was a very specific time-bound question. Could we host 4 to 6, actually, it wasn't even could we do it. Did I know anybody that could host 4 to 6 families Friday night to Monday morning for a period of 4 to 6 weeks while we were trying to figure out other solutions? We had a slated official meeting of our board for later that week. And so between receiving that call, and it seemed like a good idea to me, it also seemed a little divinely hilarious to come within 48 hours of this sermon I just preached. Talked to members of my board, and here's the order that I talked to people. First, I talked to the people that are a little bit like me that will say yes, but maybe should have thought it through a little further. And those leaders were also, I said, here's this offer. What do you think? Do you think this is something we can do? What are your concerns? And they all said, yeah, I think we could do this. So then I know all of you have these in your congregations and institutions, like bless them, the really loud naysayers that complain a lot. And they're really important people in your congregation. And those that are in official positions of power, I called them and said, here's the offer. What are your concerns? What are your questions? There truly is no dumb question, and there is no concern too small. Like, bring everything out now. And then as a board, as we talked about it and deliberated, the concerns were we realized that all of our we were aligned in values. This was like, we cared and we wanted to do it. All of our concerns were actually just logistical, and logistics are solvable. And so we worked through, okay, how do we do the logistics of this? I also turned to my neighbors, both in our town, to say, can anybody else do this? I'm new in town. Has anyone done this before? How do you do this? None of our neighbors were able to host at that time, but they all had resources we did not have, like money, beds, things like that. So we got all the stuff that we needed very quick, within 3 days, a lot faster than we thought. I will say we did not fundraise for this. There was no amount of money we had as a threshold. We figured we could probably get most of the things we needed for free. My congregation is not wealthy. We did not know or understand the deeper political complexities of this crisis or anybody's immigration status. We did have a partnership with the Brazilian Worker Center, and so we knew there was going to be a strong case management partner in case anything got above our pay grade. So we got to yes because we were grounded in our values. We had a time-bound, specific request that we could discern. I individually talked to the leaders of my congregation because it was not a decision that any one person has the power to make by themselves, unless it's your own home, to really seek out any concern or doubt, because there's reason behind most of them, to explore and investigate all of those. Then as a official body, we deliberated. And finally, at the end, I was trying to talk them out of it. Like, we'd spent so much time talking about it. I was like, can we convince ourselves that we should not do this? And we could not. And then we just tried it as we were setting our space up. We just all kind of imagined, if I were going to a hotel, what would I need? And then that was our list. And those are the things we got. And what the landscape of serving families has looked like over the last 18 months has changed maybe every 3 months. And so at first, when we would have, multiple families for just a weekend, and they would go into the shelter system, and then we would stay in touch, but wouldn't really be connected with them. Now we're in more of a place where we're having families that are staying with us longer term. And we've shifted from like a pre-emergency shelter type setting to more like not actually as a resettlement agency. So as I learned from you at a meeting, you said to stay within your competencies. And so that has also been our rallying cry: stay within our competencies. Don't do what we're not good at doing. Find somebody else who can do it. And as things have changed, the way we've been able to stay yes has been through the power of the relationships that we've built with the families. And it's really been through evaluating, is this in line with our values? Do we have the capacity to do it? And what worked last time, and what do we need to change moving forward? So we are still saying yes. We are going, I need to also take care of the people that are in my congregation. So we will have a rest period, having done this nonstop for 18 months. And I will say it was a whole lot easier to do than we thought it was going to be. And their ability to do it was really because of the trust that we built with each other. And every time we had a question, we explored it, investigated it, and asked other people who knew. And that's how we got to here. Now members of my congregation are learning Haitian Creole, and my congregation's like a third Haitian now. And we're figuring out what are all these things we didn't know before. And all these unexpected things are growing out of these relationships, which is what happens when you organize out of relationship.
In terms of context, so for the past 2 years, as you know, we had a lot of people coming here, not illegal. And that's one of the things that we are trying to really help people understand. Most of the people who are here in the shelter, hotel, wherever they are, or who are not anywhere, they have been vetted by the U.S. government. Some of them are here for 2 years, others are here for 3 years, but all of the people that we are dealing with right now, they have a legal status. So part of the work that we are doing, so many of them are in the hotel shelters, others are still trying to find their ways. So it's the same, basically, group of people who have been coming that we are trying to see exactly how we're going to protect them. The new administration, the upcoming administration, already said, so all of the legal kind of, pathway that they have, so he's going to go against them. So one of them is TPS. TPS is what we call the temporary protective status. So that is something that has been going on for years, for countries that are going through hard time, natural disasters, political turmoil, and so on and so forth. So we have been granting them that temporary status so that they can stay here because they cannot go back to their home country. So something that has been there for, I don't know how many years, and that has an impact on many countries. It's not just one, two. It's a lot of countries that are going through political turmoil who are here. He already promised that he's going to attack TPS, meaning that either asking to terminate or do not extend TPS, because when you have TPS every 18 months, you have to go through a process where you have to extend it. So the CHNV, the program that Larry was mentioning, is what we call the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan program, the humanitarian program. This is another program that through the Biden administration that allows a lot of people to come here. Again, through a vetting process legally for 2 years. So he already promised that he's going to attack this program. So a lot of people who are here are currently in limbo because they don't know exactly what he's going to do and how quickly he's going to do it. And, and sometimes it's a blanket attack. So it's not during his past administration, people were deported to go to Haiti. Guess what? They were U.S. citizens. It's when they got to Haiti that families had to send their paperwork, because so often they go to a community and then whoever that they can, put their hands on, they put their hands on without any due process and then send them back. So what we're trying to talk about now is how do we prepare ourselves to protect as many people as possible. So just to kind of, answer your question in terms of giving you the context, and then for us to continue to work, not only to protect them legally, but also to offer them, that kind of, support system, whether or not it's through housing, whether or not it's through English classes. For example, one of the big projects that we are working on for 2025 is what we call the intensive English classes to help them access jobs. So many of them are skilled, very talented, had years of experience in their home countries. However, because of the language barriers, they cannot access jobs. So what we said we're going to do, we're going to have, full week, like 2 or 3 weeks where from 9 to 5, they have people like you who are coming to volunteer alongside of them, teaching them English so that they can just go and pass an interview to access jobs. So a number of things that we can do to support them so they are not, falling prey from what the new administration is going to do.
So really specifically, and this is not unique, but it's exacerbated this time versus what we saw 8 years ago, and in Massachusetts in particular, is that the lion's share of those individuals who are in shelters you're discussing came here lawfully,
yes,
and are immigrants and are disproportionately, though not exclusively, from Haiti originally. We expect that nearly immediately after the inauguration, their status will remain, but they will remove the ability for folks to either apply for that status, that humanitarian parole status, or the ability to apply for temporary protected status. And that will not just be true for Haitians, but it'll be true for El Salvadorians, for South Sudanese, for Nepalese. The list goes on. And so the only legal means, and who knows what they'll do owning all 3 chambers, but the only legal means for the foreseeable future is to help these individuals actually apply for asylum. Because if somebody applies for asylum, from there, they can apply to have a work authorization, an EAD document. They have that. They have access to apply for that as a humanitarian parolee, but they need to apply for a different version of it connected to being an asylum claimant. And so that is what we're about to face, ma'am, which is really frightening. A group of thousands and thousands and thousands of our folks all across the Commonwealth that follow the rules, are documented, are legal, are lawful, whatever word you want to use for that. All of those are accurate. And overnight, sometime in 2025 or 2026, maybe for some of them as far as 2027, their status evaporates and they become illegal, undocumented, if we don't help them. Dr. Gabeau, for families that are in that situation, I think going back to Rabbi Lerner's initial question, like, something that I think about is, are there families that IFC is serving that my congregation could wrap around and fully kind of volunteer around? And if so, like, what does that require? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, for example, currently, because of the housing crisis that we know of for years, so a number of families who came could not access housing. And so often they connect, the new arrivals to the housing crisis when in fact the housing crisis was already in place. It's not something new because of what happened. So we have a lot of families in hotel shelters. Those are easy targets. Okay, when we're talking about the new administration and what they are trying to do, those are very easy targets, population, because they know where they are coming in and out. It's easy for ICE or for any of those people in place to go. One of the things that we are trying to do as quickly as possible, hopefully with the help of the state, is that home sharing program where, for example, as much as possible, removing families from hotel and shelters. And as you know, being in a hotel for 6 months is not the ideal. And you have children, you need to cook, you cannot cook. So there are a lot of challenges with families. So for example, the opportunity for home share is that if you have a room at your place or a basement, whatever place that is suitable for a human being to live, for you to open up your doors and say, you know what, I'm willing to help this family. And you will be able to choose to say what are the criteria, what you want, and there will be there will be a lot of things happening to make sure that it's a protected situation for both of you, hosts and families who are coming. But the wraparound services, for example, when families come, getting to know them, for example, their children. We have a lot of children in our midst who need help. And so often, they never had any chance to go to any school. So we have children who are 6 years old, 7 years old, and you're trying to have them to hold a pencil just to do some drawing. They can't because their parents have been traveling for a long time. And then when they finally made it here, guess what? They thought that they were going to be in a place, and they kept on moving them from this place to the next place, this place to the next place. So having, that support system around that family to help them with their children accessing school, for the parents to be able to get access to English classes, even conversational classes at home where you are. Those are the things that could happen and that could really alleviate the burden on families. So there are a number of models out there. For example, we have some of the NSTs, like, people just, gather among themselves and they create a team and they call themselves a welcoming team. So it could be 1, 2, 3, and then each one of you have your specific set of skills, what you want to do, and then you provide what you want to do, whether or not it's driving them to their medical appointment or taking them to a job interview, whatever you find yourself that you can do, those are things that you could help families with.
So specific outcome number 2, or next step number 2, right? So we heard from Lino about if we can mobilize really quickly, ideally raising a lot of time and love, but also $10,000 to welcome a resettled refugee family immediately. Dr. Gabeau is committing that if your congregation wants to wrap yourselves around a family that is presumably currently in a shelter in Massachusetts or is on the cusp of getting out, and raising the money and the love to do that, there are 2 core ways. Housing is going to be, as she just said, is going to be a core piece. One way could, in fact, be home hosting. Are there folks in your congregation that actually have the in-law suite or have the space and would honestly like and benefit from the company? Or another way is the power of co-signing a lease because they don't have credit history and they don't have rental history in Massachusetts or in America. I have done that. My family has done that twice. I didn't exactly tell my wife either time I was doing it. And it has, in both cases, cost me nothing because I knew it would cost me nothing because these are incredible humans who are incredible tenants. But for my signature, they can't get the apartment.
Yes.
Now, a quick point on this, and I know there's other questions. As far as apartments, if you have an in-law apartment or an actual apartment, we're moving families from emergency shelter into apartments. So there's funding through home base. So an actual rent could be charged. So in some instances, we need somewhere for them to go now. That's where the home hospitality. But also, if you have something permanent where they could be there, home base allows us to pay for. They get funding to pay for that in-law apartment, as long as it's a separate accommodation.
So, and I think this is where the power of the incredible network and power that IFC is, but also JFS and also many other organizations. But if your community says, I can only welcome in a family that is working and can fit in a one-bedroom apartment and needs a subsidy of $100 or $200 a month just to make ends meet, but needs a co-signing or what have you. Lord knows you have those families, and Lord knows there are a lot of single moms with multiple kids who can't fully work and who are so vulnerable and who are going to need a $1,500 monthly subsidy. And that's where this public funding element that Leno's talking about factors in. In Massachusetts, despite many challenges, there are a range of public funding opportunities, and these two organizations are experts in accessing them.
How do we put the pieces together of what we can offer? And there are some questions about, and maybe this is for Sasha or Reverend Everett, but how can we connect to other congregations to build communities of care, to create these holistic opportunities for new arrivals?
So often, you just need to start from just one little corner. And then from that little corner, you connect with someone else and you invite. One of the things that I love to do is to invite people to come and see. Because remember, there is power when you see something for yourself. So often when I go to places and I explain about the work, and after that I said, you know what? Do you have 20 minutes? Come and see. Because when you come and you see the families sitting, you talk to them, and you see the little children playing, and you see the hope that they have in their eyes. I mean, you cannot, go home and say, oh no, I'm going to be indifferent. You are going to take action. So that's one of the things we invite people to come and see. And then if you are, if you just want to start a conversation, we are more than happy to sit down with you and explain ways that you can do that. But when you are coming, don't come just by yourself. Bring someone along. Just take them and say, I'm going to visit FC, or I'm going to go to the MetroWest. Do you want to come with me? And I think that's how we build communities. And one thing that I said about this work, if we are looking at all of the what if, you will never start. And that's the reason why to do this work, you have to be willing to move out of comfort zone, to do something that you have never done before. And that's the reason why when you step out and you come to the communities, someone was coming to Mattapan and said, where is Mattapan? And I'm like, put it in the map, you'll find Mattapan. And then by the time that they come, and then they said, oh, wow, this is an eye-opening for me, because I have never thought that I will come to a place and to see all of those families coming together, sitting here, the children, they're smiling, so on and so forth. So again, it's a matter of saying, let me try. And then once you start that, you want to have the conversation, guess what? We have an army of people wanting to talk to you, wanting to kind of, train you, help you understand exactly what to do. But I think let's start with that. At least let me go and visit, because seeing is believing.
I will add to that as well that our congregation found that the team that we built inside our congregation needed more help than just our team. And it was the other congregations in Natick have partnered with us. And as we've been able, the more specific we can be to ask for help, the easier it is to have people help us. But even among my clergy colleagues, just giving updates when we meet was helped build connections. And as we've run into things we can't figure out, asking everybody their strategies, but just ask everyone we know. We were trying to figure out how to get the Haitian Creole driver's manuals. One of my congregants works at the RMV. She made it happen. Yeah. It's just a matter of turning to your neighbors, asking for help, and just, come and see.
Here's the specific next steps that I hear. You, in the next 48 hours, you're going to receive a handful of resources. The guide that MIRA put together on just the terms, just familiarizing yourself with all these words.
You mean this guide?
Boom, that guide.
Nailed it.
You're going to receive, through Sasha and through Reverend Laura, a clear kind of one-pager articulating the exact opportunity of co-sponsoring a family through JFS, the time, the money, the range of what that looks like. You're going to receive the corollary, the same, from IFC about welcoming in a family that is currently in or is about to leave or recently left the shelter system. And you're also going to see a wider range of, let's just call it like one-offs, right? Like that could be working with Circle of Hope to do a drive for feminine hygiene products, or could be raising $100,000 and anything and everything in between, right? You're going to be able to have that opportunity to sit and marinate on that. And then Reverend Laura and Sasha and their teams are going to follow up with you all to say, what can you do And then will you do 25% more than what you just said you can do in whatever currency and resource and ideally time and love that means? And then we're going to be following up before the end of the calendar year, trying to figure out exactly how many things that we could do in those categories. And for those situations where one congregation has the space, the other has the time, and the third has the financial resources, these two amazing leaders and their entities are going to put those communities together to make sure that we're bringing all of our strengths to bear. Is that right?
That's right.
Amen.
Amen. And I'm gonna give you the last question, but I do want to highlight something that we were talking about coming in here, and that was this notion of, for those of you who don't know, I'm a law-trained social worker, and on my signature line, if you've gotten an email from me, I say, take care, give care, Sasha. So in that light, we have people, this community, online and here in person. Some of you are able to take, and some of you are able to give. If you are able to give, then we can give it to those who can take. And if you're in a position that you need to take, then we have amazing people here who can give. And we want to connect you, and we want to do this because we love our community, and we love our neighbors, and we want to do what we can because we're called in our faith to help those that are in need.
So my job is to do two things, to give you spiritual courage and to do announcements. So I am thrilled to announce that thanks to two major contributions from the Shapiro Family Foundation and from Old South Church, we are able to hire a congregational coordinator. All of us in this coalition work are already overworked in this. We will be hiring someone in January who can follow up with you in this. This is incredibly good news. If you are in a position where maybe you don't have a space to share, but you have resources to share, praise God, and you want to give because you believe that people who are sleeping on the street right now, we talked about those who are here right now. This problem doesn't just start January 20th. It is here right now because the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has failed to build sufficient housing for the last 40 years. This is not an immigrant problem. This is a housing problem. You can give to whomever, and we will help work with congregations and that new congregational coordinator to make sure that those congregations and individuals who are hosting can help receive the funds that we need to make this happen. And so we are starting to learn, do we believe in a God who welcomes the stranger or not? Do we believe in a God who sets the Israelites free or not? We all hear that Martin Niemöller poster. They came for the gypsies. They came for the Jews. They came for the homosexuals. And we wonder what we would have done. We hear that they are going to come for the immigrants. And now we get to wonder what we will do.
We're going to end with one last question that all the panelists get to answer. What is one thing amidst the fear that is giving you hope?
Community, people like you, our different partners. You saw all the different partners up there. We have our advocacy partners like MIRA and JALSA here today, and JCRC, really working every angle to really serve the good, right? That's what we're here. And that's what gives me hope, all of you being here, and communities of caring. I see it every day. Thank you.
And same thing in terms of community, but also the beauty that comes through the ashes. So every time I said to my people, when we have the challenges, when we face the challenges, that's when you get to know who you are, who you truly are, and that's when the light that you have inside of you shine. So to me, that's a unique opportunity that we have to stand with others and say no to hatred, no to all of the, negativity that is going out there, and to say yes to love, yes to light, yes to hope. And to me, I cannot wait to see, what's going to emerge from this situation. because every single time we receive a phone call, someone knocking at the door and said, I'm here to help. I can never forget this time. It was 7 p.m. and then a family was in my waiting room. And I was, what do I do? And the staff were like, what do we do? The staff is here. We don't have a place. And I said, have faith. And they said, Dr. Gabo, it's 7 p.m. And I said, yes, it's 7 p.m. Have faith. And before you know it, a pastor came knocking at my door and said, I was in the area. And then something told me, stop by because I have a room for someone tonight. And I look at my staff and I said, you see that? I said, family, you have a place to go tonight. Just go. And then at the end of the day, everyone was like, wow, I didn't believe that at 7 p.m. that there could be a room for a family who was homeless. So to me, it's a beauty knowing that people are good. Not everyone is bad. And people have this ability to shine during the darkness time. So to me, my hope is to really see in everyone, the love and the light that you're going to shine. And for all the families to say it was worth it. With everything that they went through, it was worth it because there are people who do care about me. Thank you.
Last August, I met an incredible man named Manu, who was 29 at the time, and crossed into America as an asylum seeker, crossed here regularly, born in South Sudan, hasn't had legal status since the age of 7. Fast forward, I somehow bamboozled some of our closest friends to welcome him into their empty bedroom, and he lived there for 13 months. And on November 1st, he got his first grown-up apartment in America at Hancock Village over in Chestnut Hill, and JFS facilitated the co-signing of the lease for us. And a week later, he started as a barista working at Cafe Landwehr in Cleveland Circle, about 5 minutes, 10 minutes from his apartment. And I have a 7.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old daughters. And the 7.5-year-old, who happens to be best friends with, as part of the family that had been hosting him, found out. I told her about him working at Cafe Landwehr, and Cafe Landwehr's in our weekend brunch repertoire. So she's like, well, we have to go to Cafe Landwehr. And my wife is the one who doesn't love it. The 2 kids and I love it. And Ruthie wouldn't quite say why, but I knew why, because it was the exact same reason I wanted to go to Cafe Landwehr that morning. And so that first Saturday in November, we went, and his shift, we go at 8. The shift doesn't start till 9. And she sits there. The kid is the least patient kid on earth. And she sits there until she sees Manu, and then she needs a second smoothie so that Manu can make her this smoothie. So that alone warms my heart that she, a kid who's fairly shy, is opening up, this 7.5-year-old to this 6'4" or 5, very, very tall and handsome man from South Sudan. We had the teacher conference the next week, and they show us the work. And the work which she wrote that week, reflecting about the weekend, the one thing she wrote was, I'm going to cry, was, and then we went to Cafe Landwehr, and Manu was the barista, and Manu made me a smoothie, right? It was, of all the things we did, it is that experience. And so I can't remember exactly, I think it was Rabbi Eliza who said this, right? I do it because it's the right thing to do. I do it because I believe it's part of our faith tradition, but I'm doing it for totally selfish reasons because I am raising unbelievably entitled, adorable, but unbelievably entitled and spoiled little kids in Needham. And this is the most grounding, humbling thing I have been able to give to my children for the past 7.5 years. And we just got together little toys for 20 kids who are in a shelter in Leicester, Massachusetts. And it is selfishly why I'm doing it. It is the most important thing I am doing as a father. And it gives me so much hope to see that actually translate into the eyes of the 7.5-year-old.
What gives me hope is moments like last Sunday, we decorated the sanctuary for Advent after worship. And so we had some of the families that are currently living with us decorating or just kind of hanging out after. And there wasn't anything remarkable or amazing that happened. We were just hanging out. But it was a really funny group of folks. And all of us were operating in not our first language in a bunch of different directions. And we figured it out. And it was Folks told me later they had a hard time leaving church because it was just so much fun to decorate the sanctuary and be together. And this is just what family can look like. And this is also the power of congregations that can be greater than the power of just an individual. That when we're come together within our congregations, within our institutions, we can do a whole lot more than we can just do on our own. And yeah, simple, beautiful things like that. My office is decorated in artwork by kids that have come through and stayed at our church in the last 18 months. And right after the election, our congregation was talking about how we were feeling and fear. And one of our families said, "I am not afraid because I believe that God is in control." And I said, if I heard that from anybody else, I wouldn't buy it. But knowing you and what you have walked through, literally, and what you've come through, thank you. So the mutual testimony of who God is in all this experience gives me hope too. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for doing this.